Yo, what is going on, CoD Familia? It is your boy BN, aka Mr. Kingdom Builder, and today we are going to be talking and touching on is there KvK in Call of Dragons, how do the server merges work, and then talk about what I think some of the comparisons as far as similarities and then differences are for how Call of Dragons is currently playing out, and then how it could play out in the long term. Again, I know we've been having, a good amount of new subs that have been coming in on the channel, along with just a lot of new players that have been coming into the game, primarily due to them now having, at least as of recording this video, right, 10 kingdoms that have been made. That is something that we can see as well, right? If we go to character, we go to new, you can see here, right, that you have essentially 6 new kingdoms, and then you have the first merge kingdom at SS1, which is 1 through 5 combined. You can kind of see, right, Tamaris is where everyone starts, then Shadowlands, right, if that ends up being where we end up seeing kind of the server, Season 2 going, is essentially where batches of kingdoms will end up moving to. So before we get into everything and we break down how the merges work, when you can expect to get into a merged kingdom, and then how will those play out in the future. As always, if you enjoy the content, make sure you sub, like, ring the notification bell, and if you want to join and be a part of our conversation, hit up the Discord. You can find a link to that in the pinned comment description right down below. And remember, we got new videos, for the most part, pretty much coming out every day at 14 UTC in-game, 9 a.m. Eastern time outside. Okay, so let's break down first off, right, is there KvK in Call of Dragons? This is kind of a yes and no question, as far as the answer. If you're referring to the traditional sense of how KvK variants can operate or are usually done in a game, happens kind of one of two ways, right? I've seen it where I'm sure some people are familiar. One way is you have it where you're on a home kingdom, similar to this map and what we're seeing right now, right? So this would be arguably your home kingdom, and then a new map is created, and that's your KvK map, right? So that's where the kingdoms go, and they fight it out on a map to where your home kingdom is kind of unimpeded, right? Your home kingdom isn't really affected because everyone's kind of doing their fighting on more of a PvP-centric map. Then you have it the other way, where merges can happen, and you'll end up basically going from your home kingdom to a merged kingdom. I've seen it where, I think in Lord of the Rings, they do it kind of a similar way to Rock and IK and a few others, except they'll have it like where you can join up with other players from other kingdoms and kind of go into a new server or a new season, something to that effect. And so it's a little bit of a variant in there, right? It's kind of like a light version or a hybrid version of what you would typically see in your traditional ROK KvKs. However, when it comes to Call of Dragons, how it works here, and this is how we've heard it, and it's been confirmed from Call of Dragons CS, is that every 4 kingdoms will essentially get merged into one kingdom, right? So we've seen this. If we go here and we scroll down a little bit to go back to the character management screen, you'll see that the first 4 kingdoms from Shadowlands, right, 1 through 4, got merged into SS1. If this trend continues, then we're probably going to see SS1-002, right? And that will be kingdoms 5 through 8, and then 9 through 12, right? That's what we're anticipating at this time. Now, your kingdoms will go into the next season once a few things happen, right? So, first off, it will have, again, one gauge is looking at your seasonal, right? So that's going here to Titan's Legacy. To show you that path, you click the scroll top left, second from the top, and then you go to seasonal, right? And you can see that time here. The other one that you're going to be going off of is going to be your Augur Stone. So if we go into Augur Stone within your kingdom, you go to season, and then you can see here season overview, right? This is one way to gauge it. It'll show you what happens. It'll show you what gets reset, but then season rewards, right? So this is where you'll see the Flame Dragon, the Magma Daemon, but then you see this notification here. You must wait for other servers/kingdoms to finish their fight before the season summary can begin, and you can move on to the next season together. At the start of the next season, rewards, right? And this is important. right? You have to finish the fight, and then right before the season summary can begin, and you can move on to the next season together, right? That means everyone moves on at the same time, even if you start. So this is kind of similar to if you're looking at the rock comparison, where you have, right, where previously how they did it, right, you had a group of 8 kingdoms that would be essentially make up a continent, and each of these kingdoms would release at a different interval, right? So every kingdom would be about, what, a day or two, give or take, apart, just depending on what the intervals were. And then everyone at the end would all go in. So some kingdoms, if you were the first kingdom on the continent, right, you'd be the farthest ahead because you'd have the most time to prep. Compared to the last kingdom, could be 7 days, 10 days behind the first, but you're all starting KvK at the same time. Kind of similar in this regard. Again, you're going to have some kingdoms, like for example, in the first merge, the SS1, right, you had server 1 that had about a month and a half time on the other 3 servers, 2, 3, and 4, combined, because 2, 3, and 4 were all released within a couple days of each other. So they obviously had more time going in. Now, the idea is that's not going to happen, right, when global release and full release comes. Those intervals, I'm sure, are going to be shorter. But just to kind of give you an idea. Right, it also says in Season 2 you're going to forge new alliances with lords from neighboring servers in order to stand against the challenges to come. So, again, just to kind of show you guys what the focus is, it is important to make sure that you are at least aware of how the merges work, how they operate, and that it is something that is different. Right? Again, I've never played a game myself before that has done server merges, so this is something kind of new and fresh. However, I will say from everything we've seen in SS1 so far, I do think it gives us a lot of hope, right? This is kind of what you look at on kind of a KvK. This is more of what I would refer to as like a KvK forced situation, where it's 4 kingdoms all getting put together, and either your kingdom will unify and you're going to retain a lot of those kingdoms, or the alliances, I should say, in those kingdoms, and then you're going to be able to move forward together and retain, kind of similar to what we're seeing here for Kingdom 4, right? Which, again, for those that are curious, right, they're kind of the southern forces that we talk about in SS1, right? And then you have other kingdoms that have allied together, 1, 2, and 3, right? And it's kind of north versus south, right? Obviously, there's different variations that can play out, right? This is just how it ended up playing out in SS1, right, for the current stages we're in now. But these are things that you essentially have to factor into before you get to kind of a Season 2, so you can think about, okay, well, will all of our alliances stick together? Will some alliances join other alliances from other kingdoms? Right, so that's kind of the interesting part about how it will play out, and the fact that seasons reset, essentially, when it comes to resetting the map, resetting your alliance tech, resetting other factors as well on your individual accounts. These are things that allow for you to kind of have this refresh mentality of where you, even if one season doesn't necessarily go your way, the next season might go your way, right? So the landscape in that regard can constantly change, where you could be an overwhelming victor or you could get overwhelmingly defeated, right? And so that, to me, I think is part of the fun, because you never know where alliances will happen. I think diplomacy is obviously really important when you think about kind of going from your home kingdom to server to a merged kingdom. But if anything, that just kind of goes to show you everything that goes into it and how it works, right? It is somewhat of a KvK variant. Like I said, it's just more of a forced KvK. It's not something where you really have the option to go to. However, from what we've seen, and I think, I don't know if I'd say from what we've seen, but, I guess partly, and then I also just think part of it is just going to be how every merged kingdom plays out, is, you might run into a situation where you're fortunate enough to just hang out in Zone 1 and just farm and gather, and everyone's doing the fighting in Zone 2 and Zone 3, right? That could be something that ends up happening. I think when you're looking at it long term, that could be a nice way to accommodate merged kingdoms when they go in, right, where maybe you have the PvP and the fighting that can and may and sure will happen in Zone 1, but eventually once further zones open, right, maybe that's where you can kind of concentrate a lot of the fighting, so that way the players who are maybe just still wanting to develop their accounts can prioritize doing that in more of a safer area like a Zone 1, so that way you're still kind of essentially getting the best of the both worlds, right? Again, of course, that just depends on how the kingdoms play out, how everyone wants to go about working together and managing, etc. But again, I think if we've seen anything from SS1, there's just been an amazing amount of a lot of PvP and a lot of fighting, which has just been awesome to see. And you have a lot of other zones, or I should say Zone 1 regions, that have not been really massacred, by, at least from what we've seen so far and from what I've seen, where, you know, you don't have people that are just killing all the farmers or just going out here and free-for-alling every single person to loot players in each of these respective regions, right? A lot of the fighting has been condensed primarily to one region at this time. So that, I want to say, has just been a nice kind of silver lining to see with how SS1 has played out. With that in mind, I hope we did a good job of at least explaining to you guys how the merges work here in COD, how there kind of is and isn't KvK here. Now, that I want to lastly point out, that does not necessarily mean that KvK will never come. It doesn't mean that they may not do something in the future that might resemble a KvK. It just means that right now in this moment, they don't really have what some would consider to be their traditional KvK. But I love the direction that COD is going in. I'm really excited to see where they go and what they try, what they experiment with, because I think the game has a lot of potential. With all of that being said, I'd love to hear your thoughts on anything I've talked about, on if you had no idea how this game played out for merges, that there wasn't a KvK in it, what I've explained. Do you like some of the differences? Let me know anything and everything in the comments down below. That is going to be it for me, and hopefully my kids were somewhat enjoyable and... what's the word I want to go with? Maybe not mesmerizing, but yeah, background filler. There we go. That's what I was going for. Yeah, so let me know there. That's it for me. Until next time, I will catch you later.